right, everybody. We are live. Cool. Well, thank you all for joining. We're going to be doing a Twitch only stream today. My phone is super dead. It is charging. If we charge it fast enough, we might do a little bit of a TikTok stream. But right now, I'm just thinking, let's just do a Twitch stream. So, a lot of cool things have happened in this project since we last had a stream. So, let's walk through a lot of the things that did happen. So, if you came last time, we did a quick little supports multiple platforms implementation. Really straightforward. We're just grabbing the target frameworks inside of the folders. So as long as they matched net standard or net 5, we basically just have some quick variable to say, yeah, that worked. And we tested it when we finished and it worked. So this more or less should be okay. It's not going to be perfect because we just want this to be like a proof of concept, but it seems to work all right. And, I think it's good enough to just be okay with. So the next step here is we need to make better objects and validation here. So that's kind of what we want to do here. What we want to do is, this is a total score of 20. So each one that they satisfy will be worth 10 points. So this has to be kind of broken down into multiple statements. It can't, we could technically just say or is fine and you can just like additive add the points, but really we just want two separate statements. It could just be a switch statement too. It doesn't really matter at this point, but it has to be able to go through an if, else if, or something like that to get the points. So we'll refactor this code just a little bit and then add some validation rules so that we can tell the user. So we're going to make this section, which is kind of like the third section on our, wherever it is, our terminal here. I think it's the terminal, I don't remember, or the debug screen. So we have this supports multiple platforms. We still need to write a small little CLI for it. So it'll look exactly like what this table looked like, just with, maybe one rule instead. It will say supports multiple platforms, and then it's going to say these two as like the rule or whatever. And then each individual thing will say you're missing net standard 2.0 or you're missing net 5.0. And that could be a 0 out of 20 or a 10 out of 20 or, whatever it might be. So that's one thing I want to do tonight. The second thing I want to do is I've been working, as you can tell, all this code for this method called provides documentation. And I'm actually really proud of this solution. I thought it was kind of cool. So what I do, and I'll actually run through it because I have a breakpoint set already, is it might be hard to describe it, but I'll try to do my best. So what we do is, this is an assembly. AutoFac is an assembly, right? So AutoFac contains, like, all these are assemblies. These assemblies have all of these different namespaces in them, and all of those namespaces have what's known as a member. A member can be a lot of different things, right? It could be an interface, a class, a method, all these different types of things, right? So more or less, what we're doing, especially in this code, is that we're grabbing all of the methods, all of the fields, and all of the properties that are of a public type. So what does that mean? Well, that means that when I use this library, anything that's more or less public, like I can actually access as someone who is using this library, I want to be able to have documentation for it. So if you look at this public member right here, see how they have all these comments on it? So that to me says that as someone who's going to use this library, I can see all this in rich IntelliSense. So it's the same thing as if like I were to type a period and then I'd have these methods, right? I'd get the IntelliSense over here on the side. So like you'll see like the library that this type has absolutely no documentation. Like it was actually hard to use because I couldn't use any documentation. But if I use like another class that it should be documented, like XML stream, for example, see how there's like all this documentation for it? So it says like asynchronously releases the unmanaged resources, right? Documentation. So yeah, that's for any member indentation on the member. So you can tell that like if I look at this, for example, almost everything that is public has documentation. Private does not, because sometimes private things just have no reason to, right? Like you're kind of using them as helper functions, or you don't really need to describe it. And also they're private, so you wouldn't even be able to access them as a consumer of this DLL. So what I did was in this code, I'll walk you through how this kind of works. So there's two parts of what I want this to do. The first part is I want a package to provide an example. What that means is that if we load up the nuget like package explorer, for example, let's open, I think I had AutoFacts somewhere. I don't know. Let's just grab it from online. So if I had a package, this one has like 80 million. That's crazy. So packages have these weird folders, right? Hey, Korean Zero, how's it going? So packages have these contents of like lib folders and all these different folders that basically mean like, how are you going to ship the assembly? A lib folder is very similar to like, you can, provide a DLL for each different target framework and stuff like that. And so what I wanted to see is that if somebody provided an example at the top level, so alongside the lib folder, I want to give them 10 points. But one problem with that, nobody does this. Like there are a few packages that actually will provide an example. Most of them will do it through a README, or they'll do it through like project documentation or something like that. So that rule might just go away like long term, but I'm just going to leave it kind of as a comment for now. The second part of getting 10 points of this score is that I want the public APIs to have at least 20% or more comments. So I was kind of walking through how I was going to do this in the last stream, which is like I'm going to load the assembly, I'm going to download it, all that other type of stuff. Well, we didn't really need to do that at all. That was the last resort path, is like temporarily downloading it or putting it into like a somewhere we can just read. But we have some helper methods that we can just grab the stream from. So we have to clean up this implementation just a little bit because we have to iterate a little bit more. Right now it's just hard coded to grab the first. So if you have a lib folder, it's going to go and traverse through each one of these folders, and it's just going to grab the DLL, the first DLL it can. So that's where you kind of see this like first or default link query here. So I'm just saying like grab the files where it ends with DLL, just grab me the first one or first or default, and call it a day. It's all for testing purposes, but if you see like there's 3 different folders, so we have to do it for each one of them. So we're gonna have to do a for each loop here and iterate through each different folder. So we should have 3 items to report on, and more or less they should be the same because I don't think they're going to change their DLL too much. They're just multi-targeting. So the next thing we're doing is we're basically creating a stream, and that stream is more or less just the actual memory for like that DLL, right? The actual bytes. We're then passing in that stream and creating a memory stream. And this is kind of a hack, it's kind of a workaround, but more or less we're just copying that so that we can set the position to 0, meaning that like, hey, we want this to be sequable, so we can actually read it. So then once we do that, we're basically using another library called monosyscil. and we're grabbing the assembly definition and we're reading directly from that memory stream we created. So once we're in there, we can do the same thing that we're pretty much doing here. We can iterate through almost everything here, right? Like we can see all the public members, private members, all that type of stuff. So we're doing a for each loop and saying, okay, for every type that is inside of this assembly definition, what we're going to do is we're going to say, if it's public, then we want to count all those members, right? So then we take that and we have this members of just like an int of 0, right? So that'll give us a count of the public accessible members. So those are the things that are, the total amount. Next, what we do is we do the same thing it's actually the NuGet Package Explorer. We do the same thing, but we want to use the XML file here because this XML file is really just like a glorified, let's actually see if we can, it'll load. You can see it down here a little bit, but this XML file is, it's just saying like, okay, for this assembly, I have these members, right? And then I have this huge list of all of the members that have documentation, or at least generated all for. So what we're doing within there is we're doing the same exact thing. We're just, more or less creating a memory stream, setting the position so it's seekable, and then we're loading that document directly from the memory stream. The next thing is like, we're just doing something really simple. We're just saying, grab all the elements that have a member count, right? So we're just grabbing everything from everything that has a tag of member, right? So that will give us our our documented count. Now, there's a few flaws with this, right? Because you can have things that are going to be documented that aren't public, right? So you can have like a private method that might be documented, or you might have internal, or like things that really don't matter, but they're still documented. So at the end of it, we're just kind of like throwing out a quick like console write line to say, hey, we have this documented over the regular members, and that's pretty much all we're doing right now. So if I like ran this, what this would do is, iterate through everything. Let's see what breakpoints we had from the last time we worked on this. Okay, so we just jump straight in. So I'm running this against I think my library. I forget which one I had set, but like one of my old libraries. Like I created it in like an hour and I never documented anything. It's still 1.0. It doesn't really have that many downloads. I just wanted to see like how this tool would work, right? So this, for the most part, passed the test, because let's go back into our surface here. Documented members were 0. That means that I had no XML documentation, and I mean, it couldn't even read anything because there is none, right? The second thing is like members, right? I had about 300 members. It was a really small library, so definitely had like enough there. So this would spit out, a 0, right? 0% of your API is documented. So that's good. It means that we have something that at least works. So the other part is if I were to change this to like autofac, right? And I think it's like 610 or something like that. So now if we tried autofac, let's just double check the version number. I forget. Yeah, 610. So if we try autofac, you might notice that there's more documented members than there are public members, which means that is exactly what we want. Like it has more documentation than it does for public members. So we still need to make this a little bit more smart, but it's still good enough to like keep going. So we can at least like spit out this output and continue on with our scoring concept. So I don't know, this would be like 100 and what, like 20% or something. I don't know. Something. So anyway, I thought that was cool. And where's my debug output? Yeah. So I thought that was kind of cool. And yeah, so we're going to just continue on and, start implementing stuff. So that's what we've done really since. Not too much though. Like we really haven't done too much. So 1.21 or something like that. So now we need to basically put a client face on this. So some console code. And we need to do the same here. So we're going to need to kind of think about what objects we're going to need for this and put them in a central location so that we can access them. So yeah, I have to think about this a little bit further because I haven't quite, but we have to basically create a new score section and validate all that stuff and yeah, yada, yada, yada. So how I'm doing this with like the nuget conventions is I'm creating this new nuget service and I have these methods in there and I pass this package context through pretty much all of my code really. It's kind of like my God object right now, but it works pretty well. It's not like too large yet, but it's going to grow really quickly. So I'm thinking I need to make another service and I need to make one for documentation. So I'm going to make a documentation service and then I'm going to make a couple methods just to break out the example and to break out the public API and XML things. And then that's going to generate me the what's it called? The console code, right? So, or sorry, the validation code. So the validation I'd have a validator in there and I'd say, go through this list of all the API documentation versus the member documentation and then, validate it if there's any errors, right? If it's like 0%, if it's below 20% or something like that, then we're going to, throw a list of summaries and then go through it and all that jazz. So we're basically going to copy and paste this for the most part. And then, yeah, we're going to kind of pretty much do this whole same thing, but just in a different area. So, I mean, it does bring a question, like, should we just have a service that is like called like our score service? And we kind of created one of that already, but this is more for the actual scoring. So maybe we should call it like a validation service or maybe even a score section service. I think that could work too. And then we could put everything in there. So that's what I'm kind of thinking. Yeah. So either score section or we break it all into each different area. So I'm thinking about that right now. Yeah, not sure yet. A list of score sections. So I think that makes the most sense to call it a score section service. And just, yeah, I think that's what we'll do. So we'll call this the score section service. And then inside of it, I'm going to copy, let's see, we don't want the score stuff. We want this stuff. So we will refactor this code. Oh, excuse me. And so we'll take that out from here. We'll bring it into here. So we got to import everything. And then we don't really need a constructor, I don't think. We just need to recreate this. We'll call this the score section service. And then something like that. And I guess we could have just refactored it, but it's all right. So that will have everything in a more or less a realistic place. And now we just need to copy, one of these last ones and implement a few more sections, right? So we have a score section for, let's start with, what do you think? API documentation. So get, what do we want to call it? Ambiguous invocation. Do I have two of them in there? Oh, because I copied and pasted it. That's right. So get, so this one's going to be its own. I'm going to say API documentation score service for now. Because it is kind of its own, like, provides documentation, but it's broken into two sections. So API XML could be another one. Provide get API documentation. I think that one's okay. Gonna have to lowercase it. So we're gonna need a new validator here. We're gonna create a new directory. We'll call this one provides documentation. And then inside of here, we're going to be calling this one API documentation validator, right? Something like that. So I like to just kind of take what we already have. I just noticed something. These namespaces are really weird. Score validations. So that needs fixed. I need to run some code cleanup on a lot of things because I moved a lot of things. So this one's a release note validator. We call this one API documentation validator. That should be okay. And then API documentation validator. So basically, I need something on the package context now to make a rule, right? So first off, let's kind of think about what that rule name will be. So we'll say the name of it, if it fails, is going to say insufficient API, or what do we call it? API XML or API, let's say public API XML documentation. And we'll say less than 20% with a message, and we'll say add more, and then we're gonna have to get a little bit more specific here. So let me open up a guest tab really quick. And I forget exactly what, I think it's just summaries is what we want. Because we want to generate comments. Okay, I don't want like API documentation. I want C# XML documentation is what I want. So we want to document your code with XML comments. So we want this. So we want more summaries. So 3 forward slashes, I think, is what I want. Yeah. So add more summaries. Yeah. Add more summary comments to your public API or something like that. That should be good. So now the rules need to be fixed. So what we're going to do here is package context is already kind of, it's in a good shape, right? Not too much stuff yet. So I'm kind of thinking like if I need a documentation object that holds, does it have an example and does it have API documentation, or do I just kind of like just put the stuff in here? At this point, I'm kind of feeling like I can just put most of the stuff in here and then I can refactor that as it goes along, but I'm not sure. So I'm just going to say, let's just start really simple because this one is directly accessible. So I'll say public, and then I'll say, let's do a double because we want that percentage. And I mean, I probably want decimal actually. Is that what I want? Do I want a double or a decimal? I don't know. I think I might want a decimal. Because I don't really need too much precision. Yeah. I mean, I can work however. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, we'll just start with a double. It's fine. Work our way there. So double, and then we'll call this. What should we call it? Package API, or so let's call it public API documentation %. Something like that. Isn't there even like a % type? I don't even think, no, I don't think there is. So that should be fine for now. And now what we'll do is in that score service, we'll come back down here and we're going to be basically creating that, we'll say context dot public API documentation or whatever equals, and then we'll cast this thing as a double, right? Something like that. So we're gonna need, that should be fine. Okay, so now that we have that, we can go back into our validator rules or whatever, and we can just go like this. So rule for x dot, and then this percentage, and we'd have to say we want it to be greater than or equal to point, I don't know if I can do this, like what, 0.2, right? And I think I can actually say that, right? Greater than or equal to, that's probably what we want to say. I think so. Value to compare defines a greater than or equal to validator on the current rule builder. Validation will succeed if the property is greater than the specified value. I don't think that will take, I think it needs a Boolean, doesn't it? Oh, I still think this would be where we, I'm gonna have to look up some documentation for it because I don't really know. It's a validator. Not equal, so we'd say rule greater than or equal to, yeah. So let's look at the greater than or equal to, see if there's an example. Oh, I see. I see. Okay. So we just would do something like that. I don't know if it'll work, but we'll try. So we say something like this. That would work. Okay. So I think that should work. So let's go through it. We'll now go through the score service. And let's see. We're going to need to call it. So same thing here. We're gonna want to do this. The one thing about this though is that we might need to move some of this code. Well, I guess we don't have to per se. We're still gonna need to run this code somewhere. So I think it'd be okay here for now. I mean, we're always going to run it, so that should be okay. It's just that I think that we might be able to like put this in somewhere else. It would just look a lot nicer, but at the same time, I mean, we're kind of creating this thing to be like, hey, I have a validator and all that jazz. Yeah, we'll figure it out later. Not a big deal. So we'll say validator, and then we'll call this API documentation validator. Results validator is validate async. I'll throw in the context there. We'll have the summaries for each one. We'll add it. The title here is, let me grab my handy dandy notebook. I wrote all these things on paper because it's way easier. So let's call this one 20% or more public, let's just, yeah, public API is commented. That's going to be our score section. That's going to be at a 10. If the error count is greater than 0, we're going to say 0, otherwise 10. That should be fine. And then we're going to put all these lists of summaries, right? Should work. Okay, so now that we have that done, we can now think about it on the client side, right? Like how we report this. So we have that in there. We kind of have all of our objects here. Now we need to kind of think about the score dumper class. So this thing needs a lot of help. It kind of can work. I haven't like separated it enough yet because I still have these 5 score sections. So I kind of have this idea of like, you have a score report, 5 lists, you iterate, and then you get a score section. So because that's the case, really what I've been doing is just copying and pasting for like the provides documentation and stuff, but it's not perfect yet. And I really do need to reuse this code eventually, but I just haven't. So the easiest thing right now, what I'm going to do is copy and paste this into these new ones. So for this one, I'm going to copy and paste this, and then I'm going to basically refactor this to the provides oh, that's going to refactor above. I didn't want that. All right, so provide, yeah, I really don't want that. So we're not going to refactor it, but we're going to have to do it by hand. So we'll go like this, and then kind of, I mean, I really do need to make it a general purpose, because like all the code is starting to flow so that it can be this like general purpose thing, but right now I am still kind of doing it manually. So this one would be provides documentation. Everything seems to still work. I just got to figure out, we'll work on that on a separate stream. It's not a huge deal right now because there is some hard-coded things, like 2 things right now, this thing and this thing. So those things need to definitely get updated. It's just when will we do that, you know? So the other part 2 is we need to change that. And yeah, so if everything worked, I should be able to see at least one rule for this, for the documentation side. So let's see. I don't know. This is the first time we'll run the code, and we'll just go for it. Okay. So interesting. Nothing showed up yet. So we're going to have to kind of go through the flow again. Let's look at the score command and make sure that we're seeing everything. So in the score package, I need to go into it. So provides documentation async. Oh, I see. This is still empty. So this thing still needs to return a section, and we're not doing that. So that's where we need to still call the service and pull it in. We just never did that. So we're going to have to refactor a lot of this code. And then we can do something like this. And then we'll pass it in. Oops. So this one will be called the API documentation score section. And then we'll say get API documentation score section. And then inside here, we'll say API documentation. We need to throw a new list of score section, right? And then that should work. I think so. Okay. Still not perfect. Still is pretty bad. The other part too, I did notice that I messed up a little bit was on the score dumper class, right? I have these right now. I didn't update these. I need to do that. So this would be provides documentation and provides documentation. I noticed that when I saw the 19 and 20 twice. So now when we run this, we should hopefully see something. Okay, so we're seeing 10. We're still not seeing anything in here though. So that is interesting. I gotta figure out why. So we're rendering the table, score section tree. So there's just so much code to refactor. I just am not seeing it. So I really do need to make a multi-purpose method. There's too many mistakes I can do here. Okay, now that we fixed the tree, it should work. Okay. So now we see 20% or more of the API is commented. That's exactly what we want to see. So now we have a section for that. Cool, right? Before we move on, we're going to test it with my crappy nuget package. I should see a big fat 0 and an error. Okay, so I don't like that, whatever that is. I need to fix that. So when you go back to Fluent Validator here, with name is insufficient public API XML documentation. So why is that not showing? With name, why is it showing just the variable here? I have a with name here. I'm gonna have to look at the score dumper class, I guess. So that's where it's saying the summary of the issue, add in yellow. So the issue, so am I adding the issue correctly? So that would be back in the score section service, I think. So that's the failure.property name, I think, right? So we're gonna have to look at this and then see if there's a summary and then just kind of debug it and see what's going on. So failure, add more property name. So we just want to put failure here, not property name. So I need to do that with my other code too. Somehow, like failure to string or something. Or so property name, I'm gonna say to string. And I think I need to do that for these things too. That's what I'm starting to think. And I need to start thinking about how I I can really refactor a lot of this code. Like this thing could pass in a package context and maybe like a validator, and then I can do all the same stuff. So that's another thing that I'm just going to put a comment up here, which is refactor these methods to take in package context and a validator to reuse all the code. Because I think that would be a lot easier. We could do that really quickly, but the one problem here is that we'd also need to add this information. So we would need to add in what the title is, the max score, the current score. So I need to pass in a score section as well. And maybe it would just actually return. It could just be like a reference or something, or an out or whatever. I forget the exact one. So we can just say like, hey, you're going to return this, and you don't even have to say return. It's just going to return that. So we can definitely refactor that. Just another day would be fine. Okay, so that's not doing exactly what I want to do it either. So we had error message, and then we had, what was the other thing? With, I don't think there is anything, is there? I just don't want it to return the actual property name. So validation failure, the name of the property. What else do we have? We have a lot of different things. What's the error code? We're gonna look up validation failure just to see what. So validation failure, see if we can find that somewhere. So property name seems like it might be the right one. I guess the other question would be, am I setting the with name in the right place? I thought I was. So error message is what I thought we already are doing. Let's see. Yeah, the error message is already there with message. With name, I thought was a property name, but it's not quite doing what I expected it to do. Because if I grab the property name, it's just a string. And I can't have it just be the actual property name. I need it to be, something else. I just don't think there's anything else for me to grab from it. Yeah. Because like what I'm doing is overriding the property name with name, last name. This is right here. Note that this only replaces the name of the property in the error message. When you expect the errors collection on the validation, this error will still be associated with the property name. If you want to completely rename it, you have to use the override property name. Okay. Let's try that. So override property name. Okay. Let's try that. Add more summary comments to your public APIs. That's definitely not right. Do I need to back up on something? What did I? Issue resolution. So let's click this and see what's going on. Oh, it's still here. So this would be property name. Okay, so I didn't update that fully. And this one probably needs updated too. So I guess we might need these to be separate because some of them will need, maybe just the validator needs to be separate, but I don't know. We'll see. There we go. That's what we want. So insufficient public API XML documentation. It's less than 20%. I should probably say how much it is. So let's do that. In the validator, we'll say, let's add in public or X. Can I add? How do I get the reference, I guess? Rule for that. X of X dot. I don't think I can do it that way. I have the package context. Public API. Is there a better way? Can I just pass it? So it already is kind of saying I already have the package context and a double. Most of the time that you use this, you actually meant with name. Yeah, but that didn't work. Okay, so how do I have override message. Oh, it's just called property name. That's what I want. Okay. So what, property name? Is that what I do? Or override property? No. Hey, let's see. Please enter your property name. Maybe we drop that. I doubt that works. Please enter your property name. So name of this validated. Comparison value. I want the actual value of it. So property value. Let's just see if it works. I don't like that if it's the case. No, that definitely didn't work. I don't want to do string nut format. So why can't I do this? Custom arguments either be static values or references. That's what I want it to do. Okay. So why can't I just call this X? Is it because like this isn't escaping or something? I'm missing something that's like super obvious. X with message. Is it that with message is the only one that can? Maybe. Do I have to like double? I don't think so. Rule 4. Oh, is that what I'm doing wrong? So what's this? This is a double, so times 100. Should be fine. And we want it decimal, right? So math dot round x dot that comma 2